We are live. Welcome to Government Contracting Academy, free GovCon training with my special guest, Randall Wimmer. Holy cow, this is awesome. Randall, would you introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Randy again. This week, just like I was for the last few weeks. But so a little bit about myself because I think I occasionally forget to introduce myself and provide a little bit of description. I've been in government contracting for almost a quarter of a century. I know that makes me feel really old, but during that time frame, it has enabled me to step on a lot of landmines in this industry, and that's what I do now. I sold my last third or fourth, depending on how you want to count them, company in 2019, and I launched Government Contracting Academy in 2020, basically to give back to the industry. And I'm a little scared of karma. I'm scared that if I was so fortunate and I had a lot of good opportunities and good breaks and good fortune, and if I'm trying to share that, I think karma will have a way to come back and cause me to get an IRS audit or something. So, and that's what I'm doing. I launched Government Contracting Academy and to help people really avoid those landmines because it took me 8 years before I figured out how to have success in the federal government contracting industry. 8 years. And now what I think I've been able to do is I've been able to reduce other people's learning curve to about 8 weeks. And if you avoid the landmines you're not supposed to step on, and you do a few things differently, and it's not intuitive, it really isn't. That's why it's so hard to have success in any industry, but probably even more so in the government contracting industry because it's not intuitive. The things that people think that they need to do in order to be successful are not really the things you need to do, and vice versa. The things that you really need to be doing in order to be successful are the things that people don't even think of doing. And again, it took me 8 years to figure that out. I share that, and most people kind of catch up to where I was after the end of 8 years in 8 weeks.
You know, if we're willing to dabble into the deep end a little bit, we were just talking about that, and you're speaking to like the context. Like it took 8 years to build up the context to not only understand the situation, but understand why it's needed in the first place. And that's challenging. That's would you agree that's part of the fast tracking that we're
Oh,
trying to provide the
absolutely.
audience now? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. It really is. It's like, um, again, it's counterintuitive. You know what I mean? And it's like every bit of success that you've had in your life, Jonathan, I bet you it was different than what you thought it was going to be before you had it.
And then some. Yeah.
And then some. Yep. And then you have the success. You think like, wow, this is completely different. What it took was completely different than what I thought it was going to take. And but once you learn what it really takes, you're able to replicate that over and over and over and over and over for not only success in that same area, but you can actually even leverage that to some of the other areas that you're on. And what I was hoping we could talk about is what I consider the most important thing in federal government contracting, the most important thing, and that is risk. The government is so crazy risk averse that if you project your company as being low risk, you are going to be successful. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. Because the government, they will do anything to avoid risk. Anything. They will pay more.
Which makes sense.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it
totally.
makes sense.
And,
Yeah.
yeah, well, they're risk averse too. And you also got to think it's also people. And again, I'm going to beat up a little bit on government federal government employees a little bit here too. If you but I'm going to put myself in their shoes, and I'm a government employee right now, and I'm a manager of a business unit, within the federal government, and I need contractor support. Now I have a choice. I could either pay $10 million a year and have IBM support me, or I could pay $7 million a year and have a small business support me, providing the same exact services. IBM costs 10 million, a small business costs 3 million. Do you know what I'm going to do every single time and twice on Tuesday? I'm going to give that contract to IBM. Why? Because I don't want to deal with the risk. And I can justify it too. I can say, hey, they're low risk. They are low risk. They have reduced the probability of having issues by X%. Now, as a taxpayer, do you know what I want that government person to do? Hey, eat a little bit of that risk. Stop buying risk, aversion, because that's what they're doing. They're spending dollars to avoid risk. And I'm thinking like everybody has to accept risk. Everybody in the world has got to accept risk. except for the federal government. They don't have to. But why? Because they have a bottomless pit of money. They think it's not their money. I'm the government manager, in in the federal government. It's not my money I'm spending. I'm not writing the check. I'm using taxpayer dollars. So I'm more inclined to spend away risk than I am to accept it, manage it, God forbid, or to even embrace it. They're not willing to do that.
I just thought of a metaphor, and correct me, kind of like buying a new car compared to buying an old car. You save money on the old car, but the probability of something goofy happening, because you don't know its history and it's not warranted, and so you save money, but the probability of issues is higher than the new car, which costs more, but the risk is lower. Does that work?
Absolutely. But and I'm going to take that analogy one step further, and I'm going to say, when you buy that new car, as soon as you drive it off the lot, you've lost 15% of its value.
True.
So you're not getting as good a return on your investment when you buy a new car than when you are a used car. You are buying risk mitigation, and it's like I have this ongoing debate with my father-in-law. Again, I think my father-in-law is a saint. I really do. He's just a brilliant person. Give you the shirt off his back. Really smart, but we do have a difference. I'm willing to accept risk, and he's not. I mean, when it comes to our cars, if that light pops up, that service light, he will stop whatever he's doing, and he will drop $1,500 to $2,500 for a service, because the red light pops on. And I dig a little deeper. I'm thinking, like, what am I going to actually have done on my
routine suggestion?
Yeah, it's just like, is this basically an oil change? Why am I going to spend $1,500 on an oil change? I can go to Jiffy Lube and spend spend $100 and have my oil changed and have all my fluids topped off too. They're looking for that stuff. They do it for free. Why? Because they want to see something, so they can charge me another $40 to change something. So, and there's the difference. I tell my father-in-law, like, saying, like, hey, by the time your car's about 8, 9, 10 years old, the amount of money that you spend on all these routine maintenance could have bought you another car. So I'm saving that money and I'm buying a new car, and he's continued on an old car. So now, to be fair, it sounds like I just skewed my argument to win, to make it seem like I'm the smarter and making the better of the two choices. However, his cars always do last longer than my cars. They really do. Now the question is we really should do the analysis about how much money we're spending per mile, of utility. And so, but again, for him, it's just not worth it. He's spending away risk. And for me, especially when I was younger, I was like all about shit, I can't afford this, so I had to accept the risk. I had to go, I'm just going to get an oil change because that's all I think that's really needed now. And I'd go get the oil change instead of the mythical $1,500 service package that, again, to this very day, I have no idea what they really did. But that's what I'm talking about with risk. You actually get, when you buy a used car, you don't lose any of the depreciation when you drive it off, but you are accepting more risk, but you're getting a higher return on your investment. Risk is one of those things you have to manage. Now, as a small business owner, now when you're going after federal government contracts, I'm going to say you do not want to have any kind of risk, because that's what the government favors, and that's what the government rewards. If you are a very low risk small business, you are going to be wildly successful, and because that's the way the government thinks. You got to give the government what they want. Why fight it? Why fight it?
They're clear about it. Like, it's not to your point. I'm just re-saying it, but there's no mystery there.
Well, they're clear about it, but nobody knows that they're clear about it. Nobody knows. And this frustrates me so much. In Government Contracting Academy, I would say most of the people who join Government Contracting Academy, when they join, they probably only had about a 75% chance of understanding how their proposals were really scored. Only about, and then, and those are the really sharp ones. I would say the vast majority of small business owners do not know how their proposals are scored. They do not know what's important to the federal government. And it's written, the government tells you, but, they do it in a way that most people don't understand. and they do it, how they grade proposals. Nobody understands how they come up with these ratings, because your proposal is going to receive a series of colors. That's it. Everybody thinks like, hey, I want to write this 50 to 100 page proposal and I'm going to get a score. But I don't really understand what that score means. But if you do, you can maximize that score. And that's what I propose that small business owners do. You got to learn what goes into that score. Even if you're not bidding on prime contracts, your prime partner, your prime contracting partner does. And he's concerned about what's important to the government and how their proposals are going to be scored, not only for this one, but also for the recompetes. So again, if you know what the customer wants, and you know what they value because of how they score it, then you're going to be wildly successful. And we were joking beforehand. I'm going to say, hey, let's give a keys to the kingdom, discussion day. I'm going to tell you how to be crazy successful in the federal government. I'm not going to hint around. I'm going to just be blunt about it.
On my side, I'm chatting. I'm in the chats for this event.
Yeah.
Your opinion on this one? I'm about to put your calendar invite into these chats. How do you feel about that? And that speaks to what you and I were talking about.
Yeah. Let's do that. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? We'll just.
Yeah. Why not? So yeah. So please do that.
Awesome.
So here's the keys to the king. So here's the keys to the kingdom pitch. I'm going to tell you how to launch and grow a successful small business in the federal government contracting industry. It's all about risk. If you mitigate risk, you're going to be wildly successful. Now, why is that? You're going to be wildly successful because the federal government values low risk more than anything else. If you understand how the government evaluates your proposal, you will learn that you are given a technical/risk rating for each one of the major sections of your proposal. Now think about what I just said. Technical, that's your technical compliance with the actual request for proposal. So what's the risk piece? That's 50% of your proposal score is what that is. 50%. So that technical/risk rating, you can either, if you're compliant, you get a green. If you're you have a couple issues, you're going to get yellow. If you're unawardable because you're not compliant or you're too high risk, you're going to get red. If you're good, you're going to get a purple, and if you're outstanding, you're going to get a blue. So those are your scores, your technical/risk rating scores. And the question is how do you maximize your proposal score, or how does your prime contractor maximize their bid score? Because again, before they bring you on their bid team or give you a subcontract where they have to worry about you for their recompete, they want to make sure that you are going to be able to contribute to them getting a high score. So this is what I tell people. The technical rating, you partner with that. You partner for the technical rating. You've got to be compliant with the proposal, the request for proposal. So what do? You go out there and you find a big business partner. You're able to do that. You're only required to do 51% of the work. So go out there and compete against these other small businesses with a 49% partner who does this kind of stuff for a living and is doing $1 billion worth of this work. So that helps you with the technical compliance. They know how to write the solution because that's the part that they want to write on your proposal. So you partner for the technical solution, and as the prime contractor, you're the one who's got to be low risk. So how do you maximize that score? Well, risk means lack of corporate maturity. What does that mean? That means you lack corporate infrastructure. You're doing things in an ad hoc manner. You're not making data-driven decisions. You don't have a formal risk management program. You don't have a formal customer service or satisfaction program. You don't have a formal communication plan. You don't have a lessons learned database. You don't have change management, decision. You're not doing quarterly. You're not doing quarterly reviews. You're not doing any of those things. So when you are High risk, you like corporate maturity. So how do you have or demonstrate your corporate maturity? You demonstrate corporate maturity by having corporate credentials when you're a startup. Now, if you're a bigger company, you demonstrate your corporate maturity and being low risk by all the successful past performances that you have. For example, if you're bidding on $10 million effort and you're already managing 5 of those $10 million plus prime contracts, well, the government's going to say like, hey, wow, they're showing us that they can deliver. They must be low risk because they have 5 other contracts this size and bigger, and they're all doing really well. So that begs the question: what do you do until you have like 5 or 6 prime contracts that are really big? That's the tough part, and because you got to think about it. Your company's resume is 100% blank. It is 100% blank when you don't have those really big, prime contracts or work history. So what do you do as an individual when you lack work history? When you're just getting started out, you go out and you get, a college degree. You go out to get a professional certification. You do an internship. You do those things that actually give you something. And that's what ISO certification is. And ISO certification is like having a college degree for your company. And when you do that, what it does is it demonstrates that your company is very mature. So how does it do that? This is the proof point. No, I'm sorry, Jonathan, you were going to say something. I'm rambling here.
It's a little bit of a deviation. We just got a question on LinkedIn, and it is possible for me to show it right now. You and I have never formalized a process for how the best.
Throw it out there. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Well, I'm going to toss it up here. If you, this is pretty sweet. Actually, maybe it'd be best to read it out loud.
Yeah. Because hey guys, we sell our different shatterproof plastic products to the TX DOC locations. I'm assuming that's Texas. We are hearing that a requirement 2025 is made in America. Are you all hearing the same rumblings from other states? Although we offer a full product line, we have found it tough to get multiple items in the door due to several different people being involved and in charge of making their own decisions and not being allowed to communicate with different departments for referrals. With us being the oldest, that's as far as I see.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I'll read it on my side. With us being the oldest America plastic manufacturer in the company, I was hoping this would be an easier process when introducing more and more products, but it continues to be a tough process. That's it.
Okay, well, this is what I'm going to recommend. If you're making money in state and local governments, continue doing that. But it's a pain in the ass. Pardon my French, it is a pain in the ass. Why? Because there's 50 states, and each state has their own way of doing business. Each one of them, and you got to know that state's specific way to doing business. Now, look at all the local governments. If you want to do something for for New York City, guess what? They have their own way of doing procurements. If you want to go to Springfield, or if you want to go to Boston, you want to go to Virginia Beach, or all these local governments, these municipalities, they all have their own ways to do that. If you want to do something for the Fairfax County Public School District, and believe it or not, they actually have a massive budget. You have to learn how they do their procurements. Each one of these state and local governments, we're talking from the state of California all the way down to your local school board, they have their own way of doing business. So if you look at the opportunity, the federal government has this much opportunity, and they have one way of doing procurements. One. It's in the Federal Acquisition Regulation. The 50 states and literally thousands of municipalities and local governments, they have a near infinite number of ways to do procurements. And they do about as much business as the federal government. So the two market spaces is about the same size, but in one, you learn one system, and you can bid on any and everything in the federal government, or you got to learn a near infinite number of ways to do things, for the other side of that budget. So the very first thing that I would do is I would recommend that they start looking at federal government, federal government opportunities, because again, that's a cop out answer. That's not what he's saying, but that's not his question, but that's true. Like you learn one way and you have just as big a larger bid pool as you do if you're going after, all the state and local governments. But the point that he's trying to say is that's going to be a growing trend, is buy American. This is what a lot of small businesses do, and you don't make any money off of it. Everybody thinks that they do. It's called being a reseller. So the reason why buy American is so important, and I think it's actually a good thing for small businesses, and good on his company for actually making their own products here in the United States, is and I'll give you one, and this is an actual example. I was talking with this one person, and he says, "Hey, this is my very first contract that I won." They in the state of New Hampshire, I forget which one it was. They said they needed envelopes with the return address printed on it, and they needed 30,000 envelopes printed. Well, what we did is we found a place in China who could print it, and we figured out how much it would cost. And then what we did is we marked it up, and then we would resell them to the state of New Hampshire. And they said, and we made that much money. It's like, woohoo, good for you. You made that much money. And the reason why you made that much money and you created zero equity in your company is because that was a deal. That was a gig. You found an opportunity to make a buck or two. But the deal is the amount of money, the amount of time and effort that they spent into figuring out how to do that, it went into something that would never ever add value to their company. Because what value does that add in your company? Where if he actually learned how to print these things himself, well, now you have a printing capability. That's creating equity in your company. Wow, you've got something that somebody would be interested in buying from you, because there's something available to be purchased from you. And that is a capability to print your own envelopes, not go to China and figure out where you can find it on Alibaba cheaper and then resell it to the state government. So that is actually a good thing, buy America, because it'll eliminate a lot of this reselling stuff. Because if you look at a lot of these small business goals, that the government is allegedly creating, a lot of it is garbage contracts. Hey, we need to buy 50,000 Dell computers that have these specifications. If you order them from us, small business, you can add a 1 or 2% on top of it. So so somebody goes out there and they buy 50,000 of these printers, and let's say it costs you $10 million. So what they have to do is they're got to figure out how they're going to get $10 million, and then buy them from a vendor somewhere. And now the government, they say, okay, yeah, but we're not ready for them. So where are you going to hold them? So now these people who are selling them to the government for a 3% markup, which is what, $300,000 on a $10 million gig. So now they got $300,000 that they're supposed to take care of all of their corporate expenses. And now all of a sudden they're stuck with warehousing. Like, holy shit, we didn't anticipate that the government wouldn't be ready for them. We were just going to have them shipped directly to them. Like, nope, we're not ready for them. We're not going to be ready until this date. And how are you going to get them to us? And so the deal is there's no value, there's no equity created in a company like that, because anybody can order 10,000 Dell computers. You got to create equity in your company, because if you're not creating equity in your company, what you're doing is you're essentially, you're essentially doing gigs. You're doing side hustles. You're not actually growing
like a service
company. Yeah. So that kind of answers that question. I think is like, one is it's a good thing if you can demonstrate that you are buying it. And the deal is if I were them, I would go to all the government agencies and I would say, hey, you should be buying American, and I'd be advocating for that like crazy, because what you're doing is you're reducing your competition to only those who can do it. And if I could produce it, then I'd be finding American companies that could, because again, the government, they don't care about how much they spend usually, because if you actually look at how much we spend compared to how much we make as a government, we don't care. Hey, we're off by 20%. No, that's okay. Well, we'll just operate in a deficit.
Okay. We'll just round it.
Yeah, no, we'll just print out more. And And as a taxpayer, again, if you're not terrified by that, then you should be. But as a business person supporting the federal government contracting world, go for it, buddy. 20%. They're buying 20% more than what they can afford, and the government's money is actually pretty good right now. So you accept the money, and then, but as a taxpayer down the road, this is going to come back and bite us. I think.
Awesome. That question came from Chase Green, Director of Operations at Maryland Plastic Inc. I'm going to start calling out the person who asked it going forward. We have another one. Holy cow, this is awesome. Haley Baker. Let me post it up here. Would you like me to read it? Where we're going to formalize this question?
Yeah, I can read this one. Haley Baker. So I'm a private investigator. I specialize in missing persons cases. In 2023, over $718 billion was awarded for private investigations and background checks. I've had a hard time finding any sort of contracts related to those alleged contracts. How can I best find those contracts? Now, here's the deal. I'm not aware of missing persons contract, but I do know this. I do know that the government is way behind on doing background investigations for clearances.
Ooh, good call.
There's a backlog of clearances. So this is what I tell people, if you're in a market niche and you can't find enough business opportunities to bid on, then what you have to do is you've got to expand your service offerings to related fields. So and I'll talk a little bit more specifically about that. But like in broader terms, what happens? I was working with a client, and they said, "Hey, we do cloud security." And I'm thinking like, "Oh, okay." And they said, "Yeah, but we can't find garbage. We can't find anything to bid on." And I'm thinking like, the cloud is a very big deal. There's tons of money being spent on it. I said, but they don't. And then we started researching this, and I sat down with them, and I said, like, look, I said, it's like you are offering to provide that much of a package that people always buy together. It's just like saying like, yeah, but we sell eggs. Well, do you sell a dozen eggs? No, we just sell the 11th and the 12th egg. It's like people want to buy a dozen eggs. They don't want to buy just the 11th and the 12th egg, in a carton. So if you're not going to sell a dozen eggs, then don't sell eggs. You got to sell the other 10 as well, not just the 11th and the 12th egg. So you have to look at how the government is buying these services. And because I suspect that they're bundled up, you're selling, missing persons. You're that's like the 12th egg in a carton. They're buying the other 11th, and because I guarantee you, they're not doing an a request for proposal for somebody who goes missing. They got people on contract providing investigative services, period, and that's just one of the services that that they need. But they don't know when they're going to need it, just by the very nature. They don't know when people are going to go missing. So that would be my guess, is that they're buying a lot of it, but they're buying it as part of a broader service. And that's what I would research. Again, I don't know anything about investigative services, but I would expand into this to figure out what it is that they're buying. Because if they're spending that kind of money on it, then what they're doing is they're buying it as part of a bundled package, and you got to figure out what else is in that package and sell the whole package. And I think if you do that, you'll be successful. Now, there's a difference. That's a challenge of saying like, hey, I can't find enough stuff to bid on, versus I'm not successful in winning it. So once you get to that point where you find enough work to bid on, now the question is how are you going to be competitive? So that's the next question that they're going to be asking. Like, say, okay, I found it, now what? Well, this is something that I tell people in the white collar industry, and it gets back to risk. The number one risk to the government, if you really want to peel this onion right now, is information security. If you're a government program manager, I'm talking about you're a government decision maker, government executive, the fastest way you're going to find your name written on the Washington Post in a very ugly, nasty way is to have a data breach, is to have some type of information security lapse. In fact, 95% of all white collar companies, the information that you're going to be touching is either classified, controlled unclassified, PII, personal identifiable information, or proprietary. There's 4 categories. And again, 95% of all the information that you touch is going to fall in one of those 4 bins. So what I tell people to do is you need to get ISO 27001 Information Security Management System certified. Again, getting back to that, you want to be low risk. Well, it's like getting a college degree for your company that shows that you are very, 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 very low risk. Lower risk than well over 99% of your peers who are not certified. And that will put you, in my opinion, will put you on the inside track to wanting those things. Because again, the government, they don't care about how much that they have to spend. What they want to do is they want to spend away risk. And and I don't think these private investigation firms are massive multi-billion-dollar companies, so they're all on the smaller side. That would be my guess. So the question is how do they spend away risk? Well, they're going to spend away risk, by maybe spending a little bit more for a company who has that ISO 27001 Information Security Management System certification. That's one of the most powerful certifications that I help, my clients obtain. And it's really, really a differentiator. It's a difference maker for these companies that get that. And everybody thinks like, I don't know anything about that. Like, how do I get it? Well, the good news about it is much of that certification requirements are not really truly relevant to a really small business. They are when you start become what I call mid-major, like a $1 billion company, where you have your own land, you have your own routers, you have your own this, you have to have, you're doing your own software code, and you got to make sure that it's not vulnerable to a cyber attack, and all those different things. So much of it is not even relevant to a small business. So it becomes a paperwork chase, and we give you all the paperwork. We give you all the policies, all the procedures, all of the all the guidelines, all of the manuals that you need, and so you have a policy and a procedure in place for when you do grow into it. And that's all they need to see when a section's not relevant to you. Do you have a policy, procedure, manual, guidelines, roles and responsibilities defined for when you do need it? And if the answer to that is yes, then you're passing the audit. And then that's how it becomes very doable and very easy for small businesses to obtain these impressive certifications, because most of them, when they're really small, not even relevant to them.
We have so Chase Green asked a follow-up question. I believe I could answer this one, but I'm going to toss it up here anyway, because this is awesome. Holy cow. If you're watching, ask more questions. This is great. It's interactive.
Are there any government contractors or distributors that have built an established reputation you would recommend us looking into in order to use their expertise and knowledge to open doors with new locations and states? I personally don't know that, but here's the deal. I'm going to share a trick with you. On LinkedIn, you can buy Sales Navigator for $70 a month, and then what you can do is you can really research this down where you can find the individual contacts. So I would start with a Google search, and I would start, distributors or made in America manufacturer of X, Y, and Z, whatever that is. So you Google it, you get a list of people, but having a list of companies doesn't really help you. You need the list of individuals that you can actually talk with and sell your product to or do partnerships with. And then what you do is you take those companies and you go to Sales Navigator. Maybe I should do that right now. Let me present it.
Oh, awesome. Good idea.
Mm-hmm. So, share entire screen, boom, share, and let's go to Sales Navigator.
All right.
So what you can do in Sales Navigator is you can go to leads and you can go to lead filters. And let's just say, I don't know any of these companies, but let's just, let's go Let's go plastics manufacturers top US. So we got Sigma Plastics. So let's go to Sigma and Berry Global. Those are easy words, Sigma and Berry. So we go to Sigma. Here's the Sigma Plastics Group. What was the other one? Berry Global. Boom. Sometimes they will have changed their logo and Berry Global. Boom. And then so you come over here and there's 11,000 people that are in these companies, but you don't want all of those. You just want the business development people. So you go to current job title and you do business development manager. You'll want this, so you'll want to put business development specialist. Then you'll want director of business development. Boom. You'll want like things like account manager. So maybe you want distribution people too. Distribution manager, distribution manager. So anyway, so you keep on finding all the relevant, and again, you know this industry infinitely more than I do. I don't know, the roles of these people who are the plastics world. And then once you do that, now all of a sudden, you got these people who are in the business development stuff for these types of companies that you're looking for. This is just with two companies, Sigma and Berry. And there's quite a few of these things. There's 50, So what you do is you would look E-Plastics, Eastman Chemical, Precision Molded Plastics, whatever you're the kind of company that you're looking for. BASF, I've actually the only one I've heard of. So let's go back here. Let's go to BASF and see what they have. BASF. Boom. Yeah. So now all of a sudden we're at 756 business development folks, from these three companies. And what I would do is I would hit these people up, and there's a tool that you can do. So now you got a Stuart Kevis. Now, if you go to his, you can't get his contact information because you're not connected to him. But there's a tool that you can buy called Wizza, and if you want their email address, boom, it just cost me like I think I get like 1,000 of these, or is it 1,500 or 2,500 a day or something like that. I forget how many you get, but it's just like a lot. So now I'm getting his contact information. So it usually takes a couple seconds to do that. The most efficient way to do that is right here. This Stuart.Kevis@basf.com. The easiest way to do that is to create a saved list. Save to list, you create a list, and then you can find the whole list, using Wizza. Wizza costs about $1,000 a month. $1,000 a year. So, but it's well worth it because you can actually find these people's, not only, if you want to, you can find their phone numbers also. I think you got a smaller number of credits to get phone numbers, but I would reach out to them. I would connect with them. I would get their email. If once they connect with you at that point, then you can have their phone number, and I would start contacting these people, see if they want to start partnering. But what I would really do is and this is I'm all over the place here today, but what I would do is in the federal government contracting world, there's over 40,000 big business prime contractor business development executives, over 40,000. So I tell people to use a tool like this, find all of the big companies like Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics IT. You find all these companies, and then you find all the business development people, business development executives, account managers, proposal managers, capture managers, account managers, account executives, all that kind of stuff. And you'll have over 40,000. And then what I would do is I would start an email campaign going to them, like say, "Hi, Bob, I'm the CEO of a ISO 9001, ISO 27001 certified small business, and I would love to learn how I may become one of your trusted small business partners." Boom. That's what you do. Now, it's a law of big numbers here. You got to have a lot of numbers because most of these people, they get hit up by small businesses every single day. But here's the difference. 99% of those small businesses, they're asking for a handout. They're saying, "Hey, I'm a small business, and guess what you have to do? I know you have to, get part of that." Am I still there? Okay, there we go. Can you hear me? Okay, you're on mute. Can you still hear me?
Yep.
Oh, yeah,
You're no longer sharing though.
Okay, that's good. So,
Okay.
so the deal is 99% of those small businesses are reaching out to these business development executives, and they got nothing to offer but but their handouts that like, give me, and that, if you talk about one thing that really irritates, I'll even say it this way, pisses off, a big business executive. It's that because I used to be a big business executive, and I hated those small businesses that had nothing to offer. They come up to me, they're small businesses. So I know that they don't have work experience. I'm bidding on a $1 billion contract with TSA, for example. And, I get all these small businesses hitting me up, and they want a piece of the pie. And I'd ask them, I said, like, "What do you have to offer?" Because I got to win this thing, and risk is half of my bid score. What are you giving me? To lower my small business utilization risk, because about a third of that contract has got to go to small businesses. Now, the question is the government going to look at the third that's being done by small businesses and be terrified and give it to the other company because our small businesses are really risky? That's the worst case scenario for me. So what am I going to do? I'm going to find small businesses who can demonstrate that they're not risky. So, and the overwhelming majority of those small businesses who are reaching out, they got nothing to offer. They got blank resumes, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not giving them a hard time for that. What I'm giving them a hard time about is their sense of entitlement, and that is they think that because they're a small business, somehow or another they're entitled for me, to give them work when they have nothing to offer me, and that's
simultaneously increasing the risk, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
They're doing the exact opposite. They're not offering any value to me in the form of risk mitigation of my small utilization plan. They're actually increasing the risk, and then they get like pissed off, like saying, "Hey, I'm a woman in small business, or I'm a minority-owned business, or I'm a service-disabled veteran-owned small business. Let's wave our flag together." And it's like, I don't give a damn about the flag right now. I'm trying to make a buck. Baby needs a new pair of shoes. Not to be brutal, but the deal is these are business decisions, and if you don't offer value, you're never going to get anything. And the only value that you can offer as a startup is to say, "I can reduce your risk. I'm not going to be like the other small businesses." Now, I say that, and people always ask me, say, "Well, Randy, how much does it differentiate you getting these corporate credentials? Like ISO 9001 and ISO 27001. This is how much. Less than 1% of U.S. companies, both big and small, possess a single ISO certification. Think about what I just said. Less than 1%. Less than 0.1% have two. So I'm going to see if I'm going to show you a picture here. Let me see if I can find it real quickly, and I'm going to show you how much it can actually help you. So share screen. Boom, boom, boom. Let me see if I can find that. Here we go. Right now, there's 70,000 small businesses who are registered in the Small Business Administration's Dynamic Small Business Database. 70,000. So there's at least 70,000 small businesses who have registered to do business with the federal government. However, that's only part of the story. In SAM.gov, the System for Award Management .gov, there's over 140,000 active registrations. 140,000. And the overwhelming majority of those are small businesses. So somewhere between 70,000 and 140,000 small businesses are in this federal government contracting market space. That's a lot. However, if you're able to become one of these set-aside types as a small business like HubZone, and anybody can become a HubZone. A lot of the folks I work with, they say, hey, well, Randy, I'm not a service-disabled vet, and I'm not a woman, and I'm not a minority. Like, I guess I'm screwed. I was like, no, everybody can become a HubZone because that's about your company. That's where you have an office, and that's where your employees reside. So it is very, very, very doable to become a HubZone company, historically unutilized business zone company. And so you don't want to compete between 70 to 140,000 competitors. You want to compete against 5,000. However, if you got one ISO certification, you'd be one of 51. Now think about what I just said. One of 51 companies that are ISO certified. If you got two, you'd be one of 16. Now you'd be one of 16 companies, one of 16 HubZone companies with 21 billion in prime contract earmarks and over $10 billion in subcontracting earmarks. So you're one of 16 HubZones with over $30 billion in HubZone earmarks. And you know what's crazy? This is what's crazy. If it's yellow, that means they can't meet their goal. They can't find enough qualified HubZones. Now, what do I mean by qualified? Low risk. So they will not give it to any old HubZone just to get a check in the block. They go to the government and say, hey, we can't find a low risk one. So they take a hit on their subcontracting plan on their proposal. They're willing to score lower on technical compliance because they don't want to take the hit on risk. Because risk is worth 50%. So the technical compliance, well, this is just one piece of that. They're technically compliant everywhere else on the proposal, but not on their small business, subcontracting goals. So they're willing to take a hit on that because they don't want to take the hit on the 50% risk category. So look at if it's gold, if it's yellow, I like to say gold because gold means money and opportunity. Look how poorly they're supposed to get 3% of those big, massive contracts to HubZones. 1.4, 2.3, 1.8, 2.2, 0.9, 1.2, 0.6, 2.7, 0.5, and so on, all the way down. They're most of these aren't even close to 3%. HHS is one of those I really like because HHS is like either the second or third largest budget in the federal government, and they're meeting they're only giving 0.6 to HubZones on subcontracts, on the bids that are required to have them. 0.6, not 3%, but 0.6. They're meeting 1/5 of their HubZone goals. That's 20%.
These requirements are legal obligations, right? They're not nice to haves.
They're not legal, but it's part of the program. And what do I mean by that? Am I still sharing?
Nope, it just turned off a second ago.
So yeah, they're not quote unquote legal. They're not violating or breaking a law, but it is a program, and part of their proposal score is evaluated on their compliance with it. Ooh. So they're lowering their proposal score when they can't find it. And the deal is these big companies, and I know because I used to be one, but an executive with one. They compensate for that. If they can't find a HubZone, they'll find another one to ensure that they're giving the full small business earmark to. They don't want to look greedy from the government, so they're trying to mitigate their poor score by saying like, "Hey, we couldn't find enough HubZones, so we're giving it to other small businesses, their share." So that's what they do. Now, for example, like the overall goal that goes to small businesses is 29.43%. 29.43%, nearly a third of all of these big time contracts are going to small businesses. Nobody knows that. Nearly a third. Everybody thinks like, oh my gosh, all this money is going to Northrop Grumman and Lockheed Martin and all these big companies. But when they do, roughly a third of those contracts is going, the value of those contracts are going to small businesses. So So there, that's how the government enforces it by scoring it. And but here's the kicker: 29.43 is the overall small business goal. These governments, I mean, these prime bidders, they average about 32%. So they're exceeding the small business piece of it, by, but it can't be in that specific category. And what they're doing is they're really trying to find bigger small businesses that are low risk, and they give a lot of the work to them. So if you're low risk, you're going to get a lot of work on these contracts because they know and they trust you. There's something about your company that makes it seem like they should be giving it to you because you're lower risk than their competitors. Does that make sense? What I'm saying is like,
Yes, sir.
yeah, it's like so you need to be low risk. If you're not low risk, they're gonna run from you, and they're going to give it to.
Sorry, something that might be worth pointing out, since we're trying to encourage people to jump into this arena, is the attrition, like you can't stay a small business forever, or like I'm picturing how you describe HubZone, where like the HubZone certification is temporary because you outgrow it fairly quickly.
It's hard to maintain HubZone status, and each one of these specific set asides, they give it to the ones that are really difficult, for these prime bidders to find, because they want to make sure that the prime bidders are trying to find the most challenged of small businesses. And HubZone companies are really challenged. Minority-owned, businesses, they don't always get a fair shake. Women-owned small businesses, they don't always get a fair shake. Service-disabled, veteran-owned small businesses, they don't always get a fair shake. So, what they do is they do specific earmarks for those. But what happens is those aren't supposed to be forever set-aside statuses. For example, the 8A program, you graduate from that, and you're no longer one of those. Hub zones, you've got to maintain. It's almost impossible to maintain as you grow. So you got to strike while the iron's hot. And I tell people, get these credentials when you need them the most. When you're starting out, that's when you need credentials and set aside statuses the most, because you got nothing else going for you. Your resume is blank. So, one of the most common fallacies is that, I'm not big enough to get it. Like, you'll never be big enough to get it. You'll never grow big enough to get it because you just won't. You'll never get market penetration. And because you got to give people a reason to do it. Otherwise, everybody thinks that, hey, I'm a small business and I'm starting out, and they never really think it through. The only people who are going to give you work when you're not contributing to them winning it are your family members. I'm being dead serious. Nobody's going to give you part of a contract where you're making, money off of that they could be keeping. Because when I was a business development executive for L3, I knew that if I gave if I gave work share to a small business that didn't offer anything to help me win it, then that was money that I could have kept. I could have kept that towards, for L3, and that would have increased my numbers for my bonus. Why in the world would I ever give away, work share to a small business that's going to take away from either my bonus? And when I was a small business owner, you better believe me, if you didn't offer value, why I wouldn't give you a penny of these contracts, because you didn't help me win it. And that's another thing too. Everybody thinks that they immediately go out and looking for subcontracts. You'll never get a subcontract. And the reason why is because you didn't help win the contract. The strategy is you get on these bid teams, and that's an advantage to you, because that's when they're creating their small business utilization team, and you can differentiate your company from the others if you have these credentials. And if you have these credentials, next thing you know, you're the low risk, small business. And this is what they say. I'm gonna paraphrase this, but this is what, like, in my opinion, the lowest risk company in the world is IBM. I love IBM, and so does the federal government. The federal government really loves IBM. But when IBM bids on something, let's say they're bidding on $1 billion effort, the most that they can do is 70% of that contract, because they're required to subcontract 29.43%, 30% to small businesses. And then they have to give like 3% to a hub zone and 5% for minority owned and 5% women owned, and they each get their own specific earmarks. So that for 3% of $1 billion contract is $30 million bucks. So so this is how and why it's important to IBM. Again, the lowest risk company in the world. IBM is going to say, hey, government, we're Big Blue, we're IBM, you know us, you love us, every single thing that we do, turns to gold. We deliver all the time. Watson's really clever. Aren't we clever? But you don't have to worry about the 29.43% that our small businesses are doing. Why? Because we're IBM and we're so smart. We're so much better than everybody else. We went out, we've curated the absolute most capable, lowest risk small business team in industry. We have small businesses who are certified in ISO 9001 quality management. We have small businesses who are certified in ISO 27001 information security management, the largest risk to the federal government, right now. We have companies who are, And, so IBM is terrified about risk, not because they're risky, but because you are. And, so what they're trying to do is they're trying to get small businesses who are low risk. And so here's the other thing too, which is better. Everybody thinks like, well, but still I have no work experience. When I was with L3 and a small business came up to me and they had corporate credentials versus they were doing $5 million a year. Well, $5 million a year sounds really big to a small business. So I'm like, wow, we're doing $5 million a year. Woohoo. Yeah, that doesn't even, that's not even decimal dust in the federal government. Mindset like 5 million is like, wow, that poor,
why did I show
baby.
Up today?
It's like, what's the sense? It's only 5 million a year that so 5 million means nothing to the federal government. 5 million means like you're like terrifyingly small. However, when you say that you have been audited by an accredited third party and been found fully compliant with the globally accepted industry best practices for information security management, the ISO 27001 standard, that means something to them. Shit, they've been audited. They're compliant. We got proof. There's a proof point that they're adding value to us. A small business doing $5 million in revenue means nothing to them. You got to be doing, $50 million a year before you even start, having them even notice. So that's the value. So one of the things, again, I don't want this to sound like a sales pitch or not, but the companies who I work with, they go out there and they get these corporate credentials and they use LinkedIn and Sales Navigator to find those business development executives from their target market. And then they start blasting out, hi, my name is Bob and I'm the CEO of an ISO 9001, ISO 27001 certified hub zone or SDVOSB or Open Small Business, and I'd love to learn how may earn your trust as a small business partner. Boom. They are landing about 8 to 9 teaming agreements a year just on that strategy alone. That one alone, they're getting on 8 to 9 bid teams. Now, again, these large businesses, they only bid when they're like damn near certain that they're going to win because they have bid and proposal budgets and they're very judicious in how they spend it. So they only invest when they know that they have a above 50% chance of winning. So they're getting on, successful. They're about 5 successful contract teams a year with this strategy. Now, again, it takes a little while because they're selecting their bid teams a few months before they actually bid. And then once they bid, the government takes a few months in order to make a bid decision. And then if it's protested, it's going to be an additional 3 months. And then after that, they finally get around to making the award. And, so it's a slow process. And people get a lot of frustrated, but I say like, you are really going to be happy that you're working this as hard as you are, in 18 months, because that's when all this stuff is going to start raining down on you. So
awesome. We are coming up on our last minute here, and I had 2 thoughts that I'm going to bounce off of you here live. First, you mentioned the bid team, so I was picturing at 0 to 1, but this doesn't fully apply. Like jumping into the arena, right? Then the next step is getting on the bid team. And I pictured that as like two separate segments. The first is jumping into the ring, and we speak to that one a lot.
Yeah.
Maybe that could be our next episode, is getting on a bid team, and then just the strategy that goes into that.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
yeah, right. And then a thought going with that is we could do a fake company and make up fake information and go through a fake process, like a made up example. Since it's not real, we could do it real quick, but just like having that visual, like building that model business. Like,
No, I totally agree. We do. In fact, one of the things that I do is I do that exact thing in the form of a case study in my
good
book
call.
called Good Enough to Launch Your Company. And actually, can we drop that into the chat? Maybe people,
Oh, yes, sir. Good call.
So, if you have any questions about getting ISO certified, it is the most important thing that a small business can do, in my opinion. And again, I've been doing this for a quarter of a century. I don't need any more money. I volunteer my time through Government Contracting Academy and our doing business as, which is called ISO Certification Group. But that is the number one thing that can help out a company when they're small, is get these corporate credentials, because it mitigates the risk, and risk is 50% of everybody's bid score. So if you are actually contributing to 50% of their bid score, you're going to get on a lot of bid teams. Again, the people who are doing this, they're getting on about 9-10 bid teams a year, just doing this one little strategy on the side. And over half of those are winning. So they're getting on like 5 to 6 different contract teams, awarded contract teams, where they're able to support them. So again, does it happen overnight? No, it doesn't. Because the government, they move at glacier speed. However, in about 12, 18 months, all the work that you put into getting those corporate credentials and doing that massive outreach will massively pay off, and you're going to be so glad you did it.
Awesome. Keep talking for 30 seconds. Will I post the link to your book and Facebook? Awesome.
So the next question I usually get is like, how hard is it to get ISO certification? Well, it's really easy if you're one of our clients, and the reason why is because we do all the work for you. We don't play the stump the chump game where we say, oh, you need to have an ISO compliant risk management program. Go build one, and then we'll review it. No, we give you one. We give you one, to you that's not only ISO compliant, but that worked for my companies, all of them. And because all of my companies, had these credentials. And again, I'm going to summarize how effective they are. My very first company, before I had ISO credentials, ISO certifications, my company had won a total of $16-17 million total contract awards. Now that was between 2003 and 2012. So that's what 12. Yeah, that's what 9 years, almost 10 years. And then once I got my ISO credentials, I was able to bid on much, much, much larger opportunities because I was the low risk bidder. And I won between $350 and $400 million in the next 3.5 years, compared to the 16-17 million that I'd won the previous 9 years combined. Think about that. I was averaging less than $1.8 million a year in wins, for the previous decade, and then 3.5 years I won nearly $400 million in prime contracts. That's prime contracts. I didn't even mess around with subcontracts at that point. I didn't have time for it. So believe me, I could have got on a lot of subcontracting opportunities, but I just didn't have time for it. So that is the difference between getting ISO credentials and not. $17 million versus nearly $400 million, in about a third of the time. So anyway, that's I got no hidden motives. Like I said, I volunteer my time. This is a social impact company. I've already made my money. I became a decamillionaire after my first sell alone, and then I went on. I had 2 to 3 more. So I donate my time, and what we do is we do this to remain viable, because at some point I do charge money, but again, I only do enough just to remain viable. So we could do it cheaper and faster than anybody else, if you're looking for it.
Awesome. Well, holy
Mhm.
cow, this was a great episode. We are at time. And actually, as far as I can tell, this is our best episode so far with the analytics that are visible live. Great. I look
Okay.
forward to our conversation next Tuesday.
Okay, sounds like a plan. Oh, hey, real quickly before we go, anticipate a message. If you're interested in, attending one of our webinars where we really go down to, really details, on how to do this, so it's really focused and we go deep in it. If you're interested in catching one of our webinars, uh, drop your email in the chat, and we'll make sure that you'll get an invitation to it.
Yes, sir. It's worth it. Much appreciated. Look forward to next week. Thank you.